Hello Epic Hero, and welcome to a fanfic reading of a Doctor Who fanfic. I don't think I've ever read a Doctor Who fanfic on this channel before. I think I've actually only written maybe 2 Doctor Who fanfics that weren't crossover fics, so this should be really fun. Of course, it is the 10th Doctor, because he's my favorite, and I was originally going to write it with 10 and Donna, but something changed my mind to rewrite it with 10 and Rose. They are pretty shippable and cute. So without further ado, the ego bug. Dark, futuristic passageways of red and black metal spark in eerie silence of a nearly empty research facility. In one of the labs, a tall, grinning man with a lab coat fingers the trigger of a huge blaster. In an even, calm voice, he mutters, "You dare defy me, Mr. Jennings?" "Well, sir, it's just that..." The thin young science assistant in front of him stumbles back, accidentally knocking over a test tube that crashes to the floor, spilling steaming green liquid. The armed man, somewhere in his 40s, lifts a syringe from the counter. "Well, we need to run more tests." "But..." The young assistant laughs nervously. It's not working, sir. The bug, it's not working. You would never have sacrificed humans before. You said..." "Think!" he sputters, reaching a panicked hand towards his employer. "You said..." He breathes heavily as he talks and backs against the counter, pushing a red button with the heel of his palm. It flashes muted light. Oblivious to the button, the armed scientist backs off his assistant and thinks about the words for a minute before shrugging. "That's because I didn't realize that my research, myself, is much more important than you or anyone else. If you knew how worthless you really are, you wouldn't be complaining." His boot scrapes across the dirty floor as he steps towards his assistant. "My experiments, my research, are just far more important. Just remember that. If you knew the truth, you wouldn't be trying to scream right now." Reaching his assistant, he cups his hand over the young man's mouth as his victim breathes frantically through his nostrils. "Just remember," the scientist calmly explains, "that your painful death makes way for me, a much more important human being, to live on." He pushes the hypo into the man's neck and pushes the liquid into Jennings' veins. "There you go. Now you won't resist." The assistant's eyes roll back into his head, and he flops to the floor in a limp heap. The scientist smiles. "I knew you would see reason eventually." He takes a vial from the limp hand and steps over the body and out the lab room door. Behind him, the red button still blinks. A whoosh echoes down one of the abandoned passages of the facility, and a big blue police box appears in the broken-down passage. The door creaks open, and a thin man in a trench coat, Converse, and a confident smile steps out, waving his hand to a cloud of smoke pouring from the door behind him. Coughing a couple times, he taps the outside of the box. "Well, she'll need some spare parts. Luckily, this is the perfect place to find them." He's followed by a pretty young blonde, Rose Tyler. She smiles and tucks her hair behind one ear. "Did you mean to come here, Doctor? I mean, did you plan to come here? Did you come here for sport?" "No," he explains, trekking forward. "We got a call for help." "Oh, my." She didn't expect that. "We're in luck, though, as this is one of the few places where I might be able to find Trillium," he explains. Her mom and boyfriend step out behind her. Her boyfriend is casually dressed and dark-skinned, with an odd look in his eyes. He squints at the surrounding facility. "Big place." "Well," the doctor explains, sniffing, "it's a lot of research." He takes a good look around at all of the seemingly deserted facility. "Do they get grants?" Rose asks. I should say so, he smiles, sticking his hands in his pockets and striding down the passages comfortably. The Council of Region donated a power gem last week. It can conduct more energy than a lightning bolt from the planet Electra and magnify that power over 2 billion trillion volts. They pass a passage window, looking out to the whole of outer space, and Rose's mum pauses to gaze out with an odd expression. But the doctor and Rose walk on. Basically, he explains, a lot of power. Enough to run planet Earth for 1 trillion years, or blow it up 1,000 times over. Isn't that a little dangerous? Her mum, a woman dressed too flirty for her 40-plus years, asks, hurrying to catch up with them. Well, sure it is, he affirms, looking back at her. But fortunately, all the staff working here are some of the most benevolent aliens in existence, the Atari. They literally can't do anything to harm people on purpose. They're the perfect people to guard the power because they literally can't abuse it. He smiles, pleased with this thought. Rose smiles back at him. They use it to run the base, he points all around them at the metal and walls and ceilings lined with vents and pipes. Searching for cures and illnesses, physical and psychological. Why do you think they called us? Rose's boyfriend Mickey asks, strutting behind them and scratching his head. Who knows? The doctor shrugs. Dr. Rogers, head Utari scientist, is a friend of mine. Maybe he just wanted to gab about old times. And what if we can't find anyone to give us the trillium? Rose's mum asks. What then? Well, the doctor ponders this, then shrugs. Guess we'll be a bit stuck then. But you don't have to worry about that. There's over 100 Utari working here, all in perfect health. They come upon a control room, and the doctor stops short. The seats at the consoles are deserted, and the floor is covered in dead bodies. Halting in the doorway for a moment, the doctor crouches and examines them. Rose bends over one as well, as the doctor moves from one to another and lifts the dog tag from the chain around one woman's neck. Yeah, he mutters, rising at last. That's almost every scientist registered here. Rose looks up at him. Gab about old times, eh? Well, Mickey freezes. We're doomed. Aw, don't look on the bleak side of it, eh? The doctor says, standing up. Mickey winces, stepping over a corpse. But we're stranded here for good. There's likely a murderer on the loose, and we know nothing about, and we have no weapons. There's nothing good about the situation. Exactly. The doctor points at him as though his point is proven. Mickey exchanges glances with Rose, who shrugs as the doctor rambles on. All we have is our good nature. There's no point in being glum. Oh, look, a spoon! He lifts a spoon from the dashboard and licks it. Yep, definitely a spoon. And I think that's tea on there. Chamomile tea. Who said there's nothing good about this day, eh? There's tea somewhere around here. He pats Mickey on the shoulder. And, second thought, there's a creature in this facility who's not a monster. Chamomile tea, not the drink of monsters. No, it calms you, doesn't make you violent. It's sort of that sweet, homey kind of essence. You know what I mean, kind of... He snaps his fingers, trying to think of the word. Rose prompts him. Cheerful? That's it, he grins. Cheerful, optimistic. Also, this tea is still hot, so that means he made it not long ago, so that means he's still here. You're quite right, Doctor. The scientist who injected his assistant stands in the doorway looking grim but with a small smile on his lips. The doctor grins wide. Rogers, hi! He rushes forward and takes the man by the arm, pumping it enthusiastically. Oh, I'm terribly sorry about your staff, Rogers. He rubs the back of his neck. Accident? Dr. Rogers fiddles nervously. That's just it. Oh, we don't know. Come this way, please. The doctor shrugs at Rose, who follows. Her mum cringes at the bodies, but steps over them, muttering. Mickey helps her up the steps into the corridor that the scientist leads them down. We've made many successful discoveries over the years, he explains as they pass empty lab rooms. Orion expands the human life. The room they're passing holds green and purple liquid, boiling and bubbling in cases and vials. They step into a white metal lift, and Rogers dials floor 4. The lift rises. When the door slides open, they walk down another identical passage, and Rogers gestures to the silent lab rooms as they pass. The ego bug helps depressed men and women achieve a renewed sense of self-esteem. There's a large alien bug in a tank hooked up to generators while tubes hold translucent larvae. Rose winces and her mum makes a face. They pass an electric yellow and orange-looking room, arching with electricity. Dilert is an energy serum. And here it is, our latest experiment, the power gem. They enter a huge circular room with a telescope pointing towards a wall of windows that overlooks stars. The doctor pulls his glasses from his trench coat, slips them on, and walks around the scope, examining it. In the center of the copper scope, a green gem glows and sparks. The gem was brought to us, Dr. Rogers explains, watching the doctor's examination. We've been studying it for ways to harness the power to improve our medical and psychological solutions. The doctor bends closer to the gem, squinting suspiciously at it. Rose walks to the other side of it, picking on a bolt of a large copper screw. This is a weapon, the doctor accuses, looking up and pulling off his glasses. Almost, Dr. Rogers sighs. The team of scientists were discovered turning it into some kind of weapon, not according to plan. We weren't sure what kind, but when we discovered it, we tried to stop them. All I can guess is that they activated it somehow and killed all the science stuff you just saw in there. Rose put a hand to her mouth. It must have happened in a second. I was in the lift coming down to reach them, and the lift is protected from pretty much everything. When I reached this floor, I ran in. The damage was already done. Poor devils must have accidentally killed themselves as well. Oh my, Rose's mum mutters. But that's impossible, the doctor protests. Your kind, the Atari, they can't abide power. It's not in your nature. Quite so, he sighs. I can't explain it either. The doctor squints skeptically at Rogers, then stuffs his hands into his pockets and peers back at the machine. Rose takes a step towards the scientist. But, she pushes her hair behind her ear, if they turned it on, why weren't you killed when you left the lift? Well, there was a flaw in their design, thankfully. It was meant to destroy the whole planet beneath us, based on the plans in their journals. The doctor lifts a stack of worn journals and starts flipping through the blueprints and plans. Makes sense? This base is anchored to the planet below. If it were destroyed, anyone could take this base and this weapon, fly off to wherever they choose, take over the universe, theoretically. He licks his fingers and flips a few more pages, studying the plans closely. He turns them on their side, and Rose tips her head, trying to make heads or tails of the notes. However, Dr. Rogers explains, clearing his throat and stepping forward, they must have underestimated the amount of energy that would take. The machine shut itself down to recharge, and I was able to cut the power. The doctor slams the journal shut. Lucky for us all. There's suddenly a scream, and Mickey jumps. What was that? The doctor glances at Rogers, who looks as startled as any of them. Goodness, I don't know. The doctor drops the journal. There's someone else! Dr. Rogers looks worried as the doctor dashes off as fast as he can from the room, his coat flapping behind him. Where'd the scream come from? Rose yells, following the doctor as he stops in a fork in the hall and looks urgently and indecisively both ways. Hard to tell, Rogers calls, jogging up behind them. The doctor pants, looking from one hall to the other, then points to Rose. You take that way, I'll take this one. Rose's mother pants, jogging up behind them. What about me? Running on ahead, the doctor calls back over his shoulder. You stay with Rose! She sighs as Rogers follows the doctor, and Rose gestures to the other two. Come on, then. They start off down the passage. I've got a comm. I can contact him if something goes wrong. Since when did I become so useless? Mickey asks. What makes you think I couldn't beat up whatever went wrong? You're great, Mickey, but you're not a 900-year-old alien. Meanwhile, the doctor dashes down the other passage with Rogers 2 steps behind. Come on, the doctor mutters. Where are you? He halts at the entry to a lab and sees the assistant Rogers killed earlier lying on the floor, and he bolts in, kneeling beside him and feeling his pulse. Rogers' face falls. Good Lord. The doctor sighs and turns him on his back. Looks like poison from the broken vial, which is strange, considering the gem should have killed him. He can't have been dead long. Roger shakes his head. The doctor sighs and gets to his feet. Can't have been a coincidence. He turns and examines the room. It's the one with the larvae and the mother bug. He walks slowly past the squirming, glowing larvae. Did you have test subjects for the eco bug? Depressed, suicidal people, things of that sort. Yes, Rogers sighs a jittery breath. Jenkins was one of them, but it seemed to work. His self-confidence and self-esteem returned, and he was functioning normally. Dear God, do you think he killed himself? I thought he was stable, I thought... Roger's eyes wet. The doctor takes his arms firmly and looks into his eyes. Rogers, don't blame yourself. I know your past struggles with this. I know how much it meant to you, but some people can't be helped. He sighs again and nods. I know, I guess I hoped if I couldn't get better, at least my life could mean something. My research could help someone else. Rogers, your life means something whether you help people or not. I know everyone here thought your smile and cheerful optimism made a difference. You don't need a Nobel Prize to be worth something. He nods. Thank you. The doctor claps him on the shoulder and nods, looking once more at Jenkins. Let's get back to the others. He walks out and Rogers looks at Jenkins. The doctor looks back at him. You coming? One moment, I need to... The doctor nods understandingly and steps out. Rogers kneels next to Jenkins and shuts his eyelids. Then his eyes change into a sly evil. He rises, lifts a syringe with a wriggling larva in it, and tucks it subtly into his pocket. Rose pauses in front of the lift and listens. Crying is coming from inside. It's in here! Mickey hurries forward and grabs the lift doors, prying them open with an effort. Rose grabs the other one, and they pull them open together to see a young woman huddled in the corner of the lift, hugging her knees. Rose clicks her comm on and speaks into it. Doctor, we found her. She's in... She glances at the number above the door. Lift 74. The doctor sighs, relieved. On my way. Rose pockets her comm and crouches in front of the girl, who whimpers and pulls away. Hey, it's okay, Rose promises. We're not going to hurt you. The girl, who's probably in her late 20s, wipes her tears in the back of her hand and sniffs. I heard screams. I was scared. The girl hugs herself tighter. Shh. Rose takes off her jacket and wraps it around the girl's shoulders. It's okay. It's all over now. Moments later, find all of them, including the doctor and Rogers, sitting in the telescope room as the newly found girl sips a mug of tea and tries to calm down. The doctor sits in a chair across from her, questioning her, as Rose stands behind and lays a hair on her shoulder comfortingly. What's the last thing you remember? The doctor asks. Take your time, he soothes. She takes a deep breath and tries again. I'm from the planet below. I was a volunteer for the eco-bug experiment, but when I took the lift down to the lab, it stopped before opening. And I heard screams and shrieks and blood-curdling. Anyway, I got scared. I just came here to make my nightmares and paranormal go away. And instead, I hear it happening in real time. The doctor smiles sympathetically. What's your name? Kira. You're safe now, Kira. He smiles. As soon as this facility is up and running again, you'll get your injection and everything will be okay. She looks down and nods. Rising, the doctor turns to Rogers and sighs, crossing his arms. I'm wondering if... Suddenly a red light starts flashing. Mickey jumps. What's that? Roger's face registers terror. Impending attack! He runs to a control panel and punches some buttons, staring at the screen. The doctor runs up beside him as Rogers points to the screen in surprise. It's the planet! They're arming weapons against us! Thank you so much for watching this part of Doctor Who, The Ego Bug. Tell me what you're thinking of it so far and what you think is going to happen next in the comments below. And give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. And subscribe if you want to see more of me being nerdy and stuff. I read fanfics, do fandom stuff, do writing, and motivation. And so until I see you again, remember that we are epic heroes every single day of our lives. Love you guys. Bye!